Welcome back. We're live. Equal Time is back. We have a Minnesota Aurora pregame. Dani's in her gear, obviously. I'm in my Midway Wanderers kit here, Midway in St. Paul. And we have a great guest that we're going to get right to. We can talk about Aurora in a little bit, but Dani has a guest for us today.
I do, yes, right here. I have my good friend Rochelle Hearns. She is in town from Portland, Oregon, where I used to coach with her. She is a U.S. youth soccer coaching educator and recruiter, or scouter, I suppose. Mm-hmm. She is the director and founder of Bridge City Soccer, which is an awesome club out in Oregon. We have coached W League together before. She was the previous coach at Portland State. Her list goes on and on. Most of all, she's an amazing woman, and thought she would be a really good point of view for us to talk to today.
Awesome. That's a good intro, Dani. Welcome. Welcome, Rochelle.
Yeah. So, Ro, mostly we wanted to, since we're talking about Minnesota Aurora and the W League team here, you have experience with W League, and you obviously have firsthand knowledge of what's going on in the development of youth soccer today. Kind of tell us a little bit about what you've seen in the growth of women's soccer on the development side, all the way through, now going into W League.
Well, I mean,
there we go.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. Yeah.
Hi, everyone.
You're good.
I mean, it really, there's so much more attention right now to the women's soccer, and so I mean, you see fans. Like I said, we have Portland Thorns in Portland. And to see the fan base and all of the fans that come together at that, like, it's so popular right now. It's not just popular with females, but it's also men bringing their daughters, bringing their kids. And so with all the popularity in this, I feel like now more and more clubs are starting to put more attention into the women's youth game. And so I think just from there, building a bigger base, developing better players, so that now you look at all these different avenues. It used to be that girls would come in and college was the only pathway. Mm-hmm. And it was either college, maybe you could play pro for a little bit, maybe not. And now we've got all of these other avenues, the W League, overseas, everywhere that they can now, there's a home for them if they want to play.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the importance of W League. Obviously, with you coaching it before, how important is that in the development of what's going on in the youth game now?
Yeah, so if you are a college player specifically, right, you're a college player, you aren't getting pulled up to a national team. Now, where do you go? What do you do during the summertime? What's your next step? And the W League is perfect because you've got the college players that can come home during the summer and play with a team, and it can be a very highly competitive team. And it's kind of like that next step. It gives them a taste of what they can compete at.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know if you've heard much about Minnesota Aurora yet, but I was telling her a little bit about it today. But we've had fans, like 6,000 people come out to these games. It's been a really, really welcomed environment here. So the exposure for these girls is also something that they're really excited about. Talk a little bit about the exposure that now girls and kids are coming through when they're coming through the development with the Girls and Boys Academy, and just how much exposure is important to their development.
Yeah, the more that players get seen, the more exposure that they have, the more opportunities they have, right? Mm-hmm. It's not back in the 90s when there is no social media. There's, all of these things that didn't help players get seen. Now, if you're seen, you're able to send links to college coaches. You're able to send links to other overseas to try to get picked up internationally. Mm-hmm. And also, if you're looking at like U20s, U23s, and that area, that age group, now you're able to send video to those players or to those coaches.
Sorry, I got my little kid on the other side here.
It's very important. Very important.
Talk about Dani. I had to ask Rochelle too, because you're talking about the opportunities these young women are getting now. So I'm curious, you were a player before you were coaching. Like you mentioned the 90s, it made me think you're in Wyoming of all places. So yeah. Talk about the contrast of what exposure you could get playing in Wyoming, even though I did see something about winning 4 state cups in a row or something.
Yeah. Well, when you have the team that is cows and then you have the Cowboys, then you have a fair chance, like who's going to win. We didn't have a lot of exposure. We played, like, growing up, 50,000 people in my state. going and playing in Colorado, or we'd have to travel. Actually, we used to travel to the Minnesota, the USA Cup here.
Yeah.
Well, okay, once. Not, it was one time. But there was no exposure. There was no college coaches coming to your events to see you play, or national team coaches. And so everything that you did is your parents had to market, which in Wyoming, they didn't know how to do that. So for the girls now, it's so much easier to be seen. But yeah, it was very hard growing up.
And you've seen, I mean, U.S. soccer go so far, like swing the pendulum from not having barely a women's soccer team, right? In the 91 was the first, is that right? Like the first World Cup that we were.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. And to where we are now, where it's like we're equal pay is on the docket and everything. I mean, how long have you been with U.S. soccer?
7 years.
7 years. So
Yeah.
you've seen it grow a lot.
So if you think about it, right? So like Dani says, you have the women's national team, and then you didn't used to have all of these youth teams. And so now you have the U16s, the U15s. Right now we're scouting 2008s, which are U15 is the new year, that cycle that we're starting to look at to get players in. But now they also have scouting networks for U.S. national teams, to where we go out and we're scouting all over the U.S. and bringing those players in, and we're able to now, with video, with all of the access that we have and scouts on the ground, it's a lot easier to find these players.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, just so much more opportunity than there ever was before.
Yeah. Talk to us about Bridge City Soccer Academy, because it's relatively new, and you have some really heavy hitters involved, by the way. What is it? I think Shannon Box, but you just kind of recently started that, and then of course had to take it through COVID. But talk about the challenges of that and what it's been like diving into that world so deeply that you've been on the peripheral of.
Right. So I was an executive director of a very big club, and I just needed to do something. Like, there was things that were pulling at my strength that I just wanted to do more. I wanted to care about a player. I didn't want a dollar sign on a player. I wanted to help them in their development, not only on the soccer field, but in life. And so I got together with Boxy, Shannon. She's such a phenomenal human being.
Shout out Shannon Box. We love you.
Shannon. And some
all
of the
name drops. We do all the name drops. I drop all of the names.
And so we were able to get a core group of, one of the vice president is a woman who started either Lucy, or anyway, she's a business mind, but she's also been around women's athletics for a really long time. So we got together and we just felt like the time was right for an all-female staff, all-female academy, to where we really develop the player and the person. And we have other pillars. It's leadership for them. It's how to deal with adversity. It's body image, all of these things that these girls are going through. Kendall Johnson does our leadership. She played with Dani
at the Portland Thorns. She played at University of Portland and then Thorns.
Yep. And then we do now Boxy and another girl named Jen Stoltenberg, who played NWSL for a short stint. They do our community impact, where we go out to underserved communities and we offer free soccer. And so just to build the game there for girls that don't have the opportunity, because we all know that soccer is also, you have to have money to play in most places. Yeah. So for us, that's something that it was important to us, and we wanted to have all of these different pillars so that people know who we are. So we're different. We're not just a soccer club. We're not just about winning games. And we're much more than that. And then COVID was hard. I've never had to do Zoom trainings, where you're like, all right, you guys, we're going to be in the garage and we're going to have 4 cones and we're going to do this for 30 seconds. So COVID has changed a lot of things that we can do.
Players had to really love the game to keep doing it that way, because I love the game so much, but if I was 10 and I was out of the game, I wouldn't have been doing college.
No, yeah, it was a different time. I'll be curious to see how players come out from this time. Have you seen anybody? Has it
changed them?
Has it?
Mentally, I think kids right now have a lot of mental issues, and something happened within that time period where, if you think about it, babies and kids that had never seen people's faces. right? So there's like the stat that there were those kids in those never saw facial expression really, except for their parents. And so for us, it's getting kids back to be able to kind of be resilient too and deal with things. But I think socially they were challenged a little bit because it was them on a Zoom call. It's not these interpersonal interactions that we have now.
Yeah. Well, thank goodness it was just the kids and not us that dealt with that.
Yeah. I definitely came out different person.
Me too.
Yeah, that was, I was at the time during COVID, I was being a field director for a political group, and I had to teach first-time organizers how to do that all over Zoom. And it was like, this isn't even really the thing. We're not even really doing it, but we're doing our best. And I felt so bad for them too, because I felt like it could have shaped their whole experience. So I just relate to that, like players go in that way.
I actually I needed to talk to people. So I bought a scooter and I delivered Postmates.
We all had to find something. Yeah. I know.
Just to be like, hey.
I love that.
Well, also, I would say one thing about like Minnesota Aurora and Bridge City, I think the mission is sort of the first pillar of the club. And I feel like that's something that's really unique in soccer these days. Sorry, here we go. I feel like that's something that's really unique in clubs to find these days. And I think that's something that's made Minnesota Aurora really successful so far is getting the community behind it, being accepting to everyone, trying to get everybody out to support women and women's soccer and everything that's going on. So I think that's a really amazing mission. To everybody who's listening, please follow Bridge City Soccer. Follow what they're doing. They're an amazing club, and I want to keep seeing you grow with it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to be a fan of Minnesota Aurora. I'm so excited.
Yeah, we got to have you out.
Yeah.
The ownership shares are closed for now, but maybe next year they open them up and you can become a community owner.
Count me in.
Yeah,
we all use their address, so it's like I live here.
What was your? We keep asking people because all these Aurora players now are playing in the stadium that like now they're probably used to it, but like we know on the first game it was pretty jarring, like to play in front of 5,000. So I'm just curious, like what were the biggest games you played in terms of crowds?
Me personally,
or coach.
Yeah, when I coached at Portland State, we used to play University of Portland, and it was in their time of prime when the stadiums would be packed, and you're trying to warm up the team, and the University of Portland Pilots. What's the fan club?
Yeah, it was the
Veldrom. I don't know, but they would chant, "You are practice." As you're trying to get your team ready for this game, and just be like, guys, it's okay, it's fine, we're fine, and they're just like
so humiliating,
and just trying to project your voice, and the nerves, because UP was so good, and if you got away with losing 2-1, you had won a national championship yourself. And so those were, but it was such an amazing atmosphere and experience. So for the girls that are playing there now, and for all of the staff and the people that are involved, probably to see that is so amazing. I mean, to just sit back and say, this is what we've built. This is what we've created. I'm sure is an amazing feeling.
It is awesome. Well, hey, buddy. Yeah, we want to talk a little bit. I want to talk about the game last week too, Dani. Rochelle, feel free to stay in on the conversation, but we're going to dive a little bit into the details.
All right.
Yeah.
Playing Chicago City for the third time in a row, which is kind of weird. It's like a baseball series. And interestingly, the first game they won 3-1, and then the last game when they won 4-0, Dani, I think really Chicago City actually looked a lot better in that game. They pressed us higher, but Aurora at home is starting to just overwhelm people.
Yeah. Well, I will say, I mean, I think Aurora having a team come play in that kind of an environment is something totally different, something that they're not used to. So playing away is one thing, but then coming to play at home is a totally different thing. It's like an aggregate score in Champions League. Those games can always be so different, right? And that's also kind of the beautiful thing about soccer is that every game is going to bring something different. And, Yeah, I mean, Chicago probably figured some things out. We figured some things out, you know, and it kind of goes back and forth like that. I think today will be a totally new game. Sometimes it gets dangerous after you play each other so many times that, you know, you maybe settle into a comfort zone. They have to continue to keep coming out and playing.
Chicago, what they did well is like Aurora's been playing out of the back pretty consistently and with possession and intent, and Chicago just pressed up higher, and that's what you need to do to disrupt them. But you know, the main challenge I think in terms of the gameplay adjustment for this game is this is a lot different field. So I know I saw an image it's a football field, you know, that's narrower, so it's like 60 yards wide and maybe as short as like 100 yards long.
Oh man.
So like for you, Rochelle, too, you would think about this for having a coach, like how do you make adjustments tactically because you kind of have to, or do you just try to stay to your own, you know, patterns? What do you do when you have a shift like that?
I think you do. I think you let it play out and see if your players can naturally figure it out. Because if they've been trained, you know, if you've been training and they're sophisticated players, they can. But I think eventually if they don't, you do have to make those adjustments and look for how to expose them.
Well, I think it's like NYCFC playing in Yankee Stadium, and I think, thank goodness, I don't think Gotham ever got roped into doing those baseball stadium games as much because they're better off at Red Bull, I think.
Yeah, for sure. But I will say you're starting to see Minnesota figure out their rhythm, figure out who's going to be on the attack, different ways to expose the other team. You're starting to see players get into their comfort zone. So I feel like that's been really exciting to watch happen. And I do think there is a level of sophistication that you're starting to see these players play at, especially in front of the home crowd, which is exciting for everyone I know.
Yeah, and there's consistency in the lineup, but you're seeing that also it's really balanced with the attack. We talked about that I think last game because I think 4 or 5 women have 2 goals, and that's the leading goal scorer. It's that balance, and speaking of goal scorers, the lineup came out on Twitter, and Crystal Yahweh is going to get her start, and that's really exciting. Or Yewa, sorry, Crystal Yewa, she's just kind of an interesting story. Rochelle, she played at Michigan State, but graduated 4+ years ago. And so she's in dental school and she's becoming a dentist and happened to be in Minnesota, open tryout. And so she's getting her start up top. And so we'll see that the fans would like to see her get a goal.
Yeah. That's so I mean, that's exciting because that's what it's all about really, is just keeping the game alive for all ages, you know, making this accessible and seeing them succeed, which is super exciting.
Right. And it's the balance of, we have these veterans who, like, even Christelle, like, she's not playing a tremendous amount of minutes, but like you just see the maturity she has and the way that she's involved with other players, you know, that's the value, like with Sarah Fuller too, is kind of a leader with the goalkeeping core. And one of the young goalkeepers, I don't know if you saw this week, but there was the first high school athlete in Minnesota to get a name, image, and likeness deal. And it was spurred mostly, I think, at least partly by Bayless Flynn, who's a keeper for Aurora, who just finished her sophomore year, and she signed a name, image, likeness deal.
That's awesome.
And I'll give them the shout out because they did it. I'll give them the shout out. This bank, True Stone Financial, because they did it. So shout out to True Stone.
I love that. That's so exciting. The future is here.
Yeah. What do you think about that, Rochelle, coming from like playing in Wyoming in '98? You're like a high schooler just is getting compensated for playing like as a teenager.
I mean, you look at that, you look at Olivia Moultrie. I mean, now these players, because look, in European countries, right, they're able to go in and play at a pro level. And so I think we were a little bit behind in that. And now the girls, they are able to do that now. They're able to, I think, too, you bring up the point about her being a dental hygienist. I'm not going to say her name. A dentist. I'm not going to attempt saying her name, but that shows young girls that they can also have a career and continue with their dream. And I think that to me is amazing. And so anything that we can do and help these kids too to accomplish that, to get there, just it's great.
Dani, what would your name, image, and likeness deal have been from?
I have no idea. Oh my gosh. You know what? I used to be really into making films, so I would like to say that I would have had like a YouTube channel that did really well. It was mostly be like of coaching shenanigans with these kind of guys, you know?
It works. It works.
Yeah.
That would work.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
we really appreciate you coming on, Rochelle, and we're glad that you're in Minnesota making connections with our women's soccer community because we're proud of it and it's growing for sure. So
yeah, she's got a coaching clinic going on today, so they're all out here getting ready. So we will sign off and let her go. Thank you for joining us.
This is the first. Dani, do you want to tease who might be joining us on Sunday?
Oh, we got somebody big lined up for you guys, also coming from Seattle. Do not miss it. Yes, you will love to hear what she has to say. All hands on deck. Be sure to tune in.
We're fast becoming a Pacific Northwest podcast, but look.
Yes, we are. I know. I'm sorry.
Arguably the heart of American soccer culture. So, yeah.
It's
Thanks,
true.
everybody.